Okay. So I'd like to introduce Fred Heutte, who's from the Northwest Energy Coalition, amongst, I think, other things that you're involved in. Fred, uh, Fred has a long background in climate change and energy, and he's involved with many organizations. And I just wanted to say before we start that I've had about 3 or 4 people who couldn't make it today, but they wanted to make sure that we recorded it and they could see it later on. So there's good interest in what you have to talk to us about. And Fred's going to talk to us about the Northwest Power Council's 9th Power Plan. And before you start, Fred, Alan, you wanted to make a brief announcement, I believe.
Yeah, if I could. Thanks very much indeed, Mike. As folks know, I'm co-facilitator of Southern Oregon Climate Action Now, but we are working very closely with the Oregon Coalition for an Environmental Rights Amendment. And I know that Mel Martin has spoken to this group. And what I just wanted to do was update folks. The language of the actual amendment is expected to be out very soon. And it's going to be out hopefully by No King's Day, so that we can start collecting signatures for the first round. We just need 1,000 signatures to get this actually eligible for us to collect the 160 or more thousand signatures we really need to get it on the ballot. The other thing I wanted to say was that 2 things. One, we are launching a listening tour in which we're going around the state to talk to people about why an environmental rights amendment is something to think about, and ask people to share their stories on how this might affect them and their concerns. So that was one thing. And the third thing wanted to do was invite the Engineers for a Sustainable Future to endorse the effort as an organization or individually. You can do it both ways. And you can do that by going to OSSIAunited.org and clicking on the one of the links is, I think it's engage, get involved. And if you get involved, then you will get to an opportunity to look at a series of forms, and you can pick whatever looks appropriate. So I'd like to invite you to do that. And I might drop off because the OSSIA folks are having a coalition meeting right now. Fortunately, conflicts directly with this meeting. So I might try and watch Fred's presentation later. But thank you very much indeed.
Oh, thank you, Alan. I'll give you a call later. Fred, let's do it. I made you co-host, Fred.
Okay, so let's see if I can get my screen going here. Yes. I have to find the presentation. Let me know if you can see that.
Yep. We see it.
Now, I can't see the chat, so just go ahead and speak up if you have questions, and we can go ahead as we go on. So I'm Fred Heutte, Northwest Energy Coalition. We're very glad to have ESF in our group. We are in the 4 Northwest states, Oregon, Washington, Idaho, Montana. We have about 100 member organizations, a lot of individual members. Founded in 1981. I was one of the founders, actually. I've been on staff since 2011. I was on the board for the first decade or so. And we work on, that's a lot of what I do, transmission markets, planning work. And I also have a lot of background in climate. And let me see if I can do this while I'm still on here. Just want to send you a link here. Comments from Jeff Masters and Bob Henson from their very good meteorologists, climate people, about what's going on in our nation right this minute with a dramatic, record-breaking climate propel event. The Northwest is relatively sheltered from that. But across the country, we have both record heat and record cold, and all happening right now. So everything we can do, things moving despite our federal overlords to address this is absolutely critical. The focus of the original reason for the Northwest Energy Coalition to get going was the passage of the Northwest Power Act in 1980. We formed in 1981. The Act created the Northwest Power and Conservation Council, which issues a report every 5 years and power plan for the Northwest. While it gives directives, but not guidance, I would say, but not orders to the Bonneville Power Administration, although that's a very important part of the plan. It's a regional plan for the entire Northwest. And it's a very lengthy document, the Northwest Power Act, but I'll highlight 3 things. It emphasized first, there's a fish and wildlife program, which the council is now considering that's an input to the power plan. The fish and wildlife program looks at methods to protect and recover salmon and other species affected by the hydro system. The power plan then takes input from that, along with all the other issues on power supply and demand, and creates a 20-year forecast, 20-year resource plan, and a 5-year action. The council consists of 2 members from each of our 4 states appointed by the governors. I think in most, if not all cases, confirmed by the Senate in each state. And has a professional staff based in downtown. And, has been doing this now for quite a long time. This is the 9th plan that they're considering. The 9th plan will be adopted at the end of this year. The draft of the 9th plan will come out. Probably looks like late August. So that's where we are. Kind of a nutshell. Let me see if I can figure out how to advance the stream here. One moment, please.
Does the plan get incorporated into our law?
No, it's not. It's an outcome of the work that the staff and the council do. It's not a law. It's a report required by federal law. Okay. So the key thing to understand, by the way, there is another report coming out soon from the utilities in Northwest with the work being done by E3. I know some of you are familiar with E3. Talking about, again, like a 20-year look forward on demand and a resource plan. That's pretty much done behind the scenes by the utilities. There's no public process. Power Council is a fully public thing. It is the legally designated authority for doing Northwest Power Plan. So while the E3 and utility plan will be of interest, this is the one that really matters. So here I've got basic information I just provided about the council. I won't read through all this. I can send these slides around. Oh, by the way, this is based on a presentation we got from Jennifer Light, the Power Planning Director of the council yesterday. That was actually also, so you can jump in and say things if you like. The 9th plan has been under development for about the last year. As I said, it has a 20-year perspective, a near-term action plan, includes recommendations for the region, but a particular focus on Bonneville. And here's the timeline. Let's see where kind of you are here. It says today they're on the third bottom line there. That's where we are. They're concluding the modeling right now for the plan based on a lot of inputs from all over. Everything is completely documented on the council website, all their work papers, all the presentations, replays of all the advisory committee and council meetings. All of it is available on the council's website. At next month's Power Council meeting, which will be in Whitefish, Montana, they rotate around the region. I don't remember the date right in front of me, but it's about a month from now, maybe 3 weeks from now. They'll release the first modeling results. It won't be the final version, but it will be mostly in place. That will come out next month, and then they're planning to release the draft plan for public comment on July 15th. I think the comment period actually starts a little bit after that. And they now say for 60 days, so through August and early September. We want them to extend that a couple weeks because a lot of that time period will be during vacation and during Labor Day. See if they accept that, but that's the current timeline. So this is the time to start thinking about taking a look at the work that the council is doing. Think about perhaps some of the comments we really would like you to do. Key questions for the power plan. The council does a scenario modeling approach. They don't pick a single approach. They pick a range, and then generally they've had kind of a preferred portfolio. I'm not sure they're going to do exactly that this year, but they do a scenario approach rather than just a single forecast approach. Looking, and they have a number of different scenarios. Sarah will get to a slide where they show the details on that. But they're looking, and here are some of them anyway. The new resource and transmission risk scenario, how resource selection changes with uncertainty about new resources and demand and changing transmission landscape. After not building much transmission in this region for the last several decades, and thank you to Representative Gamba for really pushing our legislature forward on that issue, the things are now starting to happen on transmission. Some things are already on the way of being built. Some things are waiting in the wings. So this is very important because new resources getting on a very congested grid need that transmission to get on the grid and start providing resources. The changing hydro operations scenario mentioned here is focused on the climate analysis that the council's been working on for the last decade. The Power Council is way ahead of other planning bodies in very sophisticated approach to take global climate models and downscale them. They don't do the downscaling, but they work with particularly 3 universities in the Northwest, Oregon State, University of Washington, and University of Victoria, which do a lot of the downscaling work, and other experts to downscale the global climate models to be more relevant for the Northwest. I won't get into details unless there's questions, but the council's approach to climate modeling is a lot better than most other places and directly applicable to this point. And what we know about hydro going forward is the future is going to look a lot like this year. More rain, warmer winter, more rain, snowpack that's diminished, variable conditions. You know, some places are relatively good for hydro this winter. The Upper Columbia Basin is pretty good. Oregon is terrible. And we're at very low, almost historically low snowpack levels right now, which is going to cause issues for wildfire, for agriculture, you name it, going through the summer. And 2 more scenarios listed here. The extreme weather scenario, that's really to look at what happens in, very difficult conditions. They don't happen very much, but you have to have a power system that's able to meet the need of those high demand periods. And then load growth uncertainty. We have a lot of load growth just generally in the region for a variety of reasons. And of course, data centers are a factor there. And there's a lot of uncertainty around that as well. So the council is running many, many, many scenario variations to represent these different categories. I won't go through all the detail here, but just to give a sense of what the kind of different buckets that they're falling into on these for these scenarios. For this one, they have 6 different sort of sub-scenarios, and that includes constrained resources, transmission availability, costs of technology, short duration storage like battery storage, slower development of demand side, flexible demand response, et cetera, energy efficiency, rooftop solar, and of course, the evolving federal landscape of policy, where we've had just a tremendous upheaval over the last year. But in spite of that, clean energy development is going forward because it makes sense financially to do that. So a lot of different, the council's probing a lot of different possibilities. Again, I mentioned the hydro operations scenario. I won't go into the details here, but a lot of this is being influenced by what's happening on what's called court-ordered spill by the Ninth Circuit, requiring spill operation. Spill means you push water over the top of the dams and let fish, especially migrating smolts, go down river, and that decreases the amount of hydro somewhat, much more in the springtime than in the late summer. The fish really need water in the late summer. There's a big controversy over that right now. But nonetheless, the council is looking very closely at hydro operations. In my opinion, they have better modeling of hydro than Bonneville does. They took a lot of the Bonneville stuff, beefed it up, very sophisticated analysis. And so the council is best positioned, more than the E3 study or anybody else, maybe even Bonneville, to look at what the current operations of the hydro system are, and very importantly, what it looks like over the next 5, 10, 20 years under climate change conditions. So the council has, as it mentions here, has 3 climate models that they've selected out of about 2 dozen to represent the range of climate futures. I talked about the downscaling that they're already doing. They're already looking at the impacts on hydro and load and demand, because climate obviously affects demand a great deal, and renewables. So wind and solar also are affected by climate. And the council also has a range of natural gas prices. That's a very important issue. And they, as they say here on the slide, they have 13,500 different modeling trajectories that they look at. They don't actually run all of them. They run a more selective amount, because otherwise it would take forever to run the model. But they start with 13,500 and whittle that down for the take out the least likely ones to occur, so that they can run the models a little bit more efficient. And modeling in the 9th plan used to be, we used to have 3 basically load and transmission zones in the modeling. Now they have 17, which is a lot more granular, a lot easier to look at different impacts in different parts of the region, and also to look at the locational value of resources. And in the olden days of a decade ago, the council's capacity expansion model, the one that figures out what new resources to build, ran on a quarterly time step, 4 time steps per year. Now it's running on an hourly analysis, which means they can't run it for every single year. They run a series of years over the next 20 years, not all end to end, but you get a much more fine-grained analysis of what the system looks like with an hourly analysis, all 87, 60 hours of the year. And here I won't go into this detail in detail unless you have questions, but this is the flow for the planning process. They're at the next to last step here, we're going to do scenario analysis, running all the modeling, and the resource strategy will come out of that as well, and they'll present all of that at the council meeting next month. The models, actually, they have 3 main models they use. One is called Genesis, Genesys. It's actually the hydro model originally, but it's really a resource model for the region and resource adequacy. It's the council does an annual resource adequacy assessment, except during the power plant. And so that model is very sophisticated, but it doesn't build anything. It just looks at what you have at a given time. They have a model called Aurora, which is used widely around the region in the West. To look at the Western system and what's happening with resource costs, demand, power flows, and so forth. And finally, they have a new model called OpGen, just by a company from Brazil, which really has a lot of hydro and very similar kind of conditions. Very sophisticated model that they're using for the capacity expansion, meaning the new resources that will be added. So, and here again is the kind of schedule going forward. We'll see results next month in April, and then July, release the draft, public comment period, probably running until close to the end of September at this point. And then the final plan will be adopted in November. That was a really fast walkthrough, so I'm happy to answer questions and open it up for comments and however you want to do this. And I can leave this up or I can stop sharing, whichever you prefer.
Fred, you said your modeling in some ways was more sophisticated than Bonneville's. Is that?
Yes, I mean, Bonneville has been doing hydro modeling since they got started, of course, and they have very sophisticated stuff, but they don't capture everything to the degree that the council does. The council is very faithful in following the way that Bonneville and actually the entities that actually run the dams, that own the dams, are the Army Corps of Engineers for most of the dams in the Columbia and Snake River, and the Bureau of Reclamation for Grand Coulee and a few others. They are the ones that, to do the actual modeling operations. There's a whole long history of that. Bonneville works with them to provide for power hydro generation. There are many other features of dams, flood risk management when the big runoff happens, for recreation, for transportation, barging, and what have you, for irrigation for some parts of the region. But all of that has to be folded into how the hydro system is operated. And while Bonneville is very sophisticated models, I think the council is that actually.
Well, how do you
take this down now? That's okay.
How do you reconcile these different models and get everybody to agree on whose is
well,
going to
the council in Bonneville have frequent meetings and have some disagreements, but I think on the whole, as the council has really gotten much more sophisticated over the last decade, and they were always good. There has been some reluctance by Bonneville and some of the public power utilities to go along with what the council has done. But remember, everything the council does is on the table. It's publicly available. And ultimately, using, they look back at the modeling and look at how things are going and refine things. They have shown that their modeling is very faithful to how the system actually operates. I think Pat has something.
Yeah, no, Fred, I was very impressed with the presentation and the people that were working on the model. I felt that their level of technological detail with regards to the existing system as well as advanced technologies, their regionalization, as you say, in terms of 17 zones for looking at transmission issues, and their approach to the modeling in terms of the optimization. One of the things that they said that I didn't fully understand, but it sounded to me like they were doing multi-vector optimization, that they were not looking to create a particular baseline scenario, that they were looking across the whole range of scenarios and trying to figure out what is the optimum scenario or the optimum configuration of the system that is a best fit to all of the different uncertainties that exist. And it may not be the optimum for any particular portfolio or a set of assumptions, but looking at the broad range of uncertainty, it kind of was the best fit for that range of uncertainty. So maybe you can explain it better.
Yeah, that's right. The council does not have a single line deterministic approach. They balance they actually have kind of a round trip. So I'll describe that. The Aurora model, which they use to model the entire West, is used by a single utility as well. Most of the utilities in the Northwest use it for some purpose. The Aurora model gives them a context. What is going to be happening? They have different scenarios there as well. How much demand will there be across the Western interconnection, which, is Colorado to the Pacific Ocean, Alberta, British Columbia, a little tiny bit of Baja. That large area that we're part of, what is the demand going to look like over the next 5, 10, 20 years? What new resources and transmission will be built? It isn't, like I say, a single line. They look at different scenarios. Look at what the impacts are, particularly on power market prices, as well as availability of resources for import into the Northwest or export from the Northwest. So that's the first step, the Aurora model. So it sets the context. The second step is they run, actually they do this twice. They run the Genesis model and then they run it again after. But I think the big second step is the opt-in capacity expansion model. Take all the detail about demand, current resources, resource retirements, new resource availability, performance, connectivity, how is there enough transmission to transmit and so forth. And then that produces a capacity expansion on a test run. What new resources do we need? That includes energy efficiency, customer side resources, energy efficiency, demand response, flexible demand, behind the meter storage, rooftop solar, you name it. as well as generation and big, grid-based storage. All of that goes into that as a dry run. And then they run that through the Genesis model, which is specifically aimed at resource adequacy to make sure the system is, as the transmission people say, is secure and actually operate given those conditions, especially given extreme weather conditions and so on. And then they might refine it to one more run with capacity expansion. So it's an iterative process. And as they do the development for the models, and these models, model suite as a whole takes a couple of weeks to run. And this is big stuff running on the cloud, basically. And they've limited the amount of, you don't want to study a lot of things that won't actually happen. So they trim out a lot of stuff that won't really happen and focus on the feasibility space that really exists as best we know it. And then they do this for, I can't remember the count, I think it's 8 years, or maybe it's 9, between now and 2045. And in effect, they're not doing a continuous year by year.
They do periods.
They do periods, exactly. So that's a basic description of what they're doing. And there's a tremendous amount of detail behind all this. They keep track of everything. What new resources are possible, what's been built recently, the new transmission coming in. It's a very deep understanding, especially in energy efficiency. Yes. Because up till now, conservation, so the Power Act calls it, for energy efficiency, has brought us most of the resources we need for expanding our system over the last 40 years. About 8,000 megawatts of energy efficiency in our system, making it the second largest resource behind hydro. But it can't grow enough to meet the rapid demand increase we're now seeing with data centers and with decarbonization.
Right. I was impressed they had, I don't know what the number was, but it looked to me like well over 20 different demand response technologies and efficiency technologies that they were including.
Yeah, that's right. I'm actually on I'm on all the advisory committees, except the conservation, demand response advisory committee. I've been on that for over a decade, and I have to say they do a really good job. I'm frustrated with it because the utility pushback and Bonneville pushback on that has been very severe. We're way behind where we should be on demand response. In a nutshell, the council, let's say that the Northwest has, winter average load of around 32,000 megawatts, plus or minus, it can go a lot higher than that during very cold weather. You can get probably about 3,000 megawatts of cost-effective demand response within 5 years, potentially. Of course, it would take a huge effort. In other words, about 10% load could be met on peak, especially in winter, which is really important for us, with enough demand response. And I think they can even go beyond that because the council's approach is fairly conservative. The problem is we've almost done none of it. PGE is doing a fair bit, little bits and pieces elsewhere. This is the big unfilled gap that we have because as demand grows and given the uncertainty of load center and other demand response is crucially important for keeping the lights on. And it's not that expensive to do, but it takes a lot of effort to do the program work to make it happen.
What areas are the ones that are, that have the worst shortage problem when something goes wrong?
The west side in both summer and winter, because we're isolated from where the generation is. And as coal and has gone off the system, which is all east side, except for Centralia. That's another story going on right now. But Centralia is shut down. Centralia Unit 2 is shut down, although DOE just instituted in order to keep it running supposedly. It hasn't actually done that problem. But Centralia was the last coal plant on the west side. Well, it was the only coal plant on the west side. Boardman shut down. The other coal plants that are out there, some of them have shut down or will shut down. 2 of the units at Colstrip way out in eastern Montana have already shut down. As that has happened, we've lost some carrying, kind of resource adequacy capacity east of the Cascades. Renewables have filled in a lot of it, but of course they're variable, and we have fallen behind on adding batteries to complement the renewables. So we have a bit of a gap already on resource adequacy on the west side in mid-late winter and in the late summer. We saw this happen in January of 24. You remember that very bad period here. We came very close to losing the west side. I can go more into that if you want. And in the summer period, a couple of the summer periods, we've had very tight conditions also on the west side. The access to renewables is a lot easier on the west side because you don't have to go with the cascades. Now, there is existing capacity on the transmission. It's just very limited. And of course, there's a lot of hydro out there that already uses that transmission. The effort to build new transmission over the Cascades is extraordinarily difficult. PGE and the Confederated Tribes of Armstrong, the tribe actually the lead on this, are upgrading the line from Round Butte on the east side to Bethel, which is Salem. The DOE tried to pull the money, but apparently now the money is going to come in for half that project. That will be ready by about 2032. It's a long time to wait. In the meantime, we have to live with what we've got.
Fred, when the report comes out, then I guess I'm assuming that the state governments and maybe federal government will be taking some action, follow in response to the report, or how does that work?
Yeah, it's basically the report, because the way the Northwest Power Act happened, it's not a direct order to utilities and states and whoever else. It's guidance. It's very, very good guidance. And the utilities do pay some attention to it. Bonneville pays attention to it when they feel it. Bonneville hasn't built anything. Bonneville is not a resource development agency. They have sponsored resource development. It's basically turned into tragedy. The Whoops nuclear plants, which they didn't build, the Energy Northwestern used to be called Whoops, built that. And a gas plant they tried to build 30 years ago, which resulted in cancellation and BP paying $350 million to the developer, Tenaska, which then built the plant that's up near Olympia as a gas plant to pay independent power producer and Puget Sound Energy they're going to have. But Bonneville doesn't know how to build resources. They do know how to help with energy efficiency, but they have fallen short in recent years. Their energy efficiency programs are with public power utilities. The investor owns do their own. And in our state, Oregon, we have the Energy Trust that actually does the management of those programs for PPE, Pacific Core, and Northwest Natural. And up till now, Idaho Power, but Idaho Power is still in their territory in Northeast Oregon to Oregon Trail of Power. So we have good energy efficiency, very strongly influenced by the power plant, but it's not mandatory. Council does the best job that really anybody could expect preparing the plan. It's really up to us, promote it to our utilities, our state regulators, our legislators, to say, this is the best thing out there. We can have confidence that what the council has put out there is a way to keep the lights on, to keep bills down, and to develop clean energy. Rep Gamba.
It sounds like when people are looking for resources now, they're basically looking for ones that are fairly portable, solar and wind kind of thing, right?
Well, we've gone a long way on solar and wind. I've been in this game for a long, long time. The first, plants that went were a couple of megawatts. Actually, there's a little story, a side story. Boeing built really big wind turbines for the time in the early 1980s up by Goldendale, right across from Oregon. 1.5 megawatt turbines. They were early 1980s. It was unthinkable. They didn't work very well. It was kind of a test thing. Since then, we've gone from smaller turbines, few hundred kilowatts, to multi-megawatt turbines. Wind is a mature industry in the Northwest. There's a lot more we can do. You can't do it everywhere. Solar has taken longer to do, but now solar is going forward at a very fast rate, especially in Oregon. You may have read there's a project a little south of Hermiston called Sunstone, developed by a company called Pinegate. There, for other reasons, they went bankrupt. They sold that plant to Amazon a couple months ago. Amazon will build the plant. It is not built yet. The numbers are just astonishing. 1,200 megawatts of solar, 1,200 megawatts and 4,800 megawatt hours of batteries. It's a it's a combo hybrid plant right here in Oregon. It's one of the biggest in the country. So we have a lot more potential for solar and wind, a lot of concern about where it goes, and we have to be careful about cumulative impact. And so a lot of local benefits to the ranchers and farmers that have the land, to the local communities, a lot of challenges for those communities, but the renewable energy industry in this state is mature and can grow a lot more. Let me add one more, which is geothermal. We have the activity down at Newberry Crater, Mazama, Waste. It'll produce something. How long, we don't know. Enhanced geothermal, like Fervo is doing in Nevada and Utah, is also coming to Oregon. Geothermal has a much smaller footprint, as you can run it flat out or you can vary it. We think we can do flexibility with it. It'll take 5+ years to get it, but it's coming too. So I believe as long as we have enough transmission, we will not be short of energy no matter what. We have plenty coming as long as we can get the transmission.
Has anybody had any interest in enhanced geothermal?
I have huge interest in it myself, and we've been talking to a lot of the companies, and I've been doing some WestTEC webinars on that. But there's a lot happening in the state that I don't actually know about. We hope for some help in the legislature at some point. I know that Amy Schlesser in the governor's office, the energy advisor, is very interested. The Department of Geology and Mineral Industries has had long 50 years of work on geothermal in our state. There is a lot of potential here. It does take some time, but think about it. You can get a 50 megawatt power plant on a 50-acre site with a couple of well pads and the appropriate transmission. That could happen on the west side. That would bypass the transmission problem we have going on.
Pretty good for a small town, isn't it?
Yeah. Could we do it? It's hard to say. I've talked to the U.S. Geological Survey. They think the rocks on the west side aren't very good, but if you go deep enough, you can get the heat. So this is stuff that we should talk about.
About 2 miles.
More like 5, 3, 4, 5.
Okay.
But they're already getting those depths in. Fervo, the big enhanced geothermal company, drilled a test well, not a production well, in sort of north central Utah a couple months ago that got to 11,000 feet in 11 days and got to 550 Fahrenheit temperatures. It's phenomenal. So that's in a good spot in Utah. We have a lot of good geothermal locations in Oregon too. The problem is they're not typically very close to transmission. Wonder if I could turn now to Rep Gamble.
Yeah, but that was kind of why I was thinking about the city association, because if they're going to consume the electricity, you don't need that much transmission.
Right. I think this is actually geothermal could be a really good thing for the east side for providing more power to public power. If Bonneville is handcuffed and not building anything, that would be local, that they could run over their own transmission and distribution in an area that's growing. I mean, look at the area around Bend and Red, just as
I think
so. Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
Oh, Pat and Representative Gamble have their hands up here too.
Yeah, I'd like to go to Representative Gamble. Thank you.
Hey, great presentation. It occurs to me that we should probably have a committee, even more in-depth report out on it in the ledge days, one of the 3 ledge days this year before we get into the session. Can you send me a write-up that I can then pitch to Lively, who won't know what the council is, won't know what it does, won't know its history, won't know anything. So you've got to, do it like you're doing it for a child. And then I'll pitch it and see if I can get it on our hearing schedule.
Yeah, happy to do that. Which months are those in? Do you remember?
Let's see. I think June,
Don't need the
September.
exact dates, just want to know that you have the months.
Yeah, I think June, September, and December is
Okay.
striking me, but I can find that out.
Yeah, I'll send that to you. The council staff's going to be very busy through the summer, but I'm quite sure that council members, by the way, are Margie Hoffman and Chuck Sanders. Chuck's with the tribes. Margie is Margie. Used to be the governor's energy advisor.
Yeah.
Have them come in and have Jen Light come in, and perhaps Peter Cogswell, who's the executive director, who lives right here where I am in Montevilla right now. I think it would be really important. Thank you for that opportunity, because, and I and others can show up as well, but it's really important for the council to show up. The council, and especially the council members from Oregon, represent our state. They're appointed by our governor and so forth. And as soon as you think is appropriate, now remember, this is going to be while they're actually developing a proven plan, but I would say earlier the better. If you can get on the June calendar, that would be great.
Yeah, I think the June one, I already asked to have below it. WECC, isn't it WECC that just finished their big transmission study?
WestTEC probably.
WestTEC, sorry.
Yeah.
I'm getting confused with the Western Energy Caucus. WestTEC, I've gotten them. They're going to be giving a report to the committee in meeting.
This recording will be available for sharing anytime you want.
Yeah, so I'd say either, maybe June or September or both, depending on how you want to do it.
I would want to give it enough time. I think the WestTEC report is also going to need some time. So let's plan on September at this point, unless Lively has a plan for that.
Yeah.
And
in September, the public comment period will be open. That's not a bad thing. It's a good time to announce, public comments are open. And it will, of course, the draft plan will be fully available at that point.
Perfect. Yeah, let's aim for that. So yeah, send me a write-up and I will pitch it to Lively.
Okay.
I've got a question for you. Actually, a couple of questions. One, with the move towards electrification and adding all these big data centers, we're going to have to build more resources and generation and transmission. What does it mean for the rates, electric rates?
Well, thanks to the efforts by our legislature that passed the Power Act last year, Citizens Utility Board was kind of the driving force. Rep. Gambit and others were absolutely pivotal in making it happen. It creates effectively a fourth rate class. So we have residential, commercial, industrial, and now new data centers, not existing ones, which there are a lot of, that will basically allow the Public Utility Commission to separate the costs that the new data centers are bringing into the system. So that's whether that's for transmission, distribution hookups, resource acquisition, whatever it might be. Now, the rules, the commission, the PUC is going through those rules right now. A little bit bumpy. I'm not directly involved, but at least that gives us a first step in the right direction. I'll also point out that there were two efforts in this past legislature that kind of were aimed at expanding data center expansion in the state. One was to extend the state incentives for high-tech industrial, including data centers. That was defeated or didn't move forward. And the other was to expand the urban growth boundary in Washington County, Hillsborough, by 1,700 acres, a lot of which would end up being data centers. It's not the first time that's been tried. That also didn't pass. That one will come back for sure. And Oregon has, the governor requested formation of a data center advisory committee, which is now meeting. I can dig up the link and put it in the chat here. They are meeting monthly from now until the end of July. They had their first meeting a couple of weeks ago. So a lot of the issues we're talking about will be discussed, in the Data Center Advisory Committee is producing a report to the governor and the legislature in October. So there's a lot happening that is designed to respond to real requests to make sure that data centers pay their own way and don't push that cost onto other customers of all kinds. and not just residential, but our commercial and industrial customers as well. It's only fair. These are really big resources that take a lot of time and effort to deal with and a lot of power. I'll just mention, I'm going to try to put this in the chat. Columbia River Keep, who just issued a report that is absolutely must read, in my view, on what the data center situation is in both Oregon and Washington. Just to give you the big numbers. Oregon has over 3,000 megawatts of data centers today. It's something like 16 or 18% of our total load. We're number 2 in the country behind Northern Virginia. About 800 of it is in Hillsborough, about 2,800 on the east side, including 1,800 for Amazon alone. And they have a whole bunch of them, a couple dozen of them, I guess, or 20 of them. Now they're building a lot more. Data centers are already here, but it took a long time to build that up. And it's very disruptive now because the big new ones are coming up. So that's the long answer to your question, but I hope that helps.
Well, and I want to add a little nuance, if I might, Pat, before you hop in. The reason we are number 2 in the country is our tax structure. So most states are collecting sales tax on every single computer that goes in those things every 3 years. That's a lot of money. We have no sales tax. And so we give away property tax for the first 5 years, which I think I saw a number the other day. It was knocking on $500 million a year in property tax breaks across the board. And those are the two things that we're going to have to solve if we want to slow the roll for the data centers. I just wanted that in the mix.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, go ahead.
Let me follow up on excuse me, Fred. Yeah, let me follow up on Bob's point. I think we're entering an era where we can't keep designing our system as a big central station model or paradigm. We can't, because we're designing for peak loads, which only happen a few days or a few hours out of the year, and we need to begin to get more utilization out of our electricity grid. We need to do that with distributed resources so that we can increase that utilization. And over the past 20, 30 years, as you said, Fred, we've kept the capacity needs for the region pretty flat because energy efficiency was absorbing all of the new load growth. We can do the same thing if we increase utilization of our existing distribution network, and it'll reduce pressure on our transmission system, and it'll lower costs for all customers because we'll be putting more kilowatt hours through the existing infrastructure without having to build new infrastructure. I think this is the key to keeping the expansion of our electricity demands, not just for data centers, but for electrification of buildings and transportation, to keep it affordable. And I think this needs to be a common theme throughout a lot of the various legislative initiatives that we undertake in 27.
I would agree with that, but I add one thing or a couple things. One is, we can meet the peak capacity needs a lot with demand flexibility, no question, and energy efficiency and storage, all those things that don't require new power stations and new transmission. We need all of them. We need to really emphasize a more balanced approach, especially on the customer side. But you also, especially for storage, for battery storage or other kinds of storage, you need energy to put in those.
Right.
So we're going to have to build some more for that anyway. I see a future where we have a really good state energy strategy. We have a tremendous range of experience. We have a fully mature renewable energy industry. We're beginning to see more batteries. PGE has already put 500 megawatts online. We have a lot more coming. They're expensive, but they really work. They don't create the energy, but they store in you can use it when you need it. We could see some more data center expansion in the state. I think we're getting close to the limit. I think the east side is going to see more. It does provide some benefits. The local communities do get benefits, but the ones that get the benefits, there's 1 or 2 or 3 of them, 30 others are really don't. That's not very fair. We have to think more about that. But in the future, a clean, affordable, reliable grid, equitable rates, affordable, is fundamental to our state's economic and social and environmental health. And we can do this, but we have to clear our way through a lot of corporate hand waving and political hand waving to go where we're already planning to go.
And so Fred, and getting back to rates and the effect on rates, the big in data centers we're going to be able to get them to pay their own way, and maybe that won't have a profound effect on rates for the average person. But as we move to a green economy and we eliminate the fossil fuels, we're going to be building more wind and solar and some sort of backup. And the one thing it's always mentioned that wind and solar are cost competitive with any other fossil fuel source or cheaper even, but that ignores the fact that you need storage in order to make it work. And when you factor in the cost of storage, how attractive are wind and solar? I'm a big proponent of
yeah, the costs are, I'm going to say this outright. The cost of the wind solar battery, a good mix, plus, get as much demand response as you can get behind, customer storage, et cetera, is less than the cost of a new combined cycle gas turbine, less than today.
Really?
Okay, that gap is going to grow. Gas turbines are getting more expensive. The natural gas is getting more expensive. And we don't have the pipeline capacity to build a lot more gas anyway. That goes triple for nuclear. I know there's a big effort on the east side to get nuclear going again. Nuclear power is going to cost $150 to $300 a megawatt hour. Solar wind battery combined is somewhere between 60 and 80, maybe 100, something like that. It's much less right now to do the things we're already doing.
A good example of that, Bob, was the PGE shortlist for their latest all-source RFP request for proposals was all solar wind hybrids and battery storage, 100% of it for almost, 4.7 gigawatts, Fred, if you remember that.
Yeah,
number.
something, and they didn't pick that much of what they got. They got a huge amount of Vista, the electric utility Vista in Washington, same thing. Of course, Vista is also gas down here in Southern Oregon. The ship has sailed. Clean energy is the winner. We have to make sure it gets down the track. It's already out there. We have shown how a small state like Oregon can take advantage of our location and our availability of clean energy and make it really work.
You said that where they needed batteries, they were only providing 2 hours of storage.
No, the typical battery you can configure batteries any way you like. Just charge them any way you like. The typical battery configuration is aimed at a 4-hour discharge. So, like I said, that gigantic Sunstone project down there, I can't remember if Morrow County, I think. Anyway, is 1,200 megawatts of battery storage output, input or output. That's the megawatt in or out. 4,800 megawatt hours of storage within the battery. So you can import or export 1,200 megawatts for 4 hours with that battery array. It's just the scale of these things has gotten enormous.
Well, and it's gotten worse apparently because there's a load that big.
Well, let's put it this way. I think the city of Portland's load is less than that. So, the big data centers, the biggest data center we have right now is at QTS, maybe the Amazon ones together are big, in Hillsborough, which is 300 megawatts now on the way to 500. That's how big those things are. We have, I'm just thinking out loud here, Portland General Electric's total load is around 2,400 average megawatts. Say they peak at around 4,500 in hot weather, cold weather. About a quarter of their load is Intel data centers, you name it, on the west side. So the load that's going to you and me and all the customers and big business, the other high tech commercial buildings, government buildings, is around 1,800 megawatts for the entire PGE system. Portland is somewhat less than half of that, if I recall right. The city of Portland, not the Portland suburbs. So think about it. That one solar battery project on the east side can provide more than that.
Easy.
You know, I just have to say it again. I see a very good future for us because we've done the work for the last 30 plus years to put ourselves in this position. We have a lot of challenges. By the way, one more thing I should add about costs. Like, we have an aging, like everybody does, we have an aging system, grid system, distribution, transmission keeps up pretty well. PGE came to the end of my block last summer and replaced a 100-year-old power pole. I thank goodness for them. They just replaced a bunch of stuff along Burnside from about 50th to 70th. Good for them. That's really expensive work to do, but it has to be done.
But yeah, it seems like if it's going to be a problem, it should be fixed.
And I might add, because PAC, which also I'm in Montevilla right now, PAC serves one side of the street, PG is on the PG side. PAC doesn't do so good. And the outages, if anybody lives in Northeast Portland knows about this, they have a lot of local outages. The system needs to be upgraded. That's very expensive. PGE is spending about $500 million a year right now on distribution system, new stuff and upgrades, and they should. Now we keep close eye on it and empower the Public Utility Commission and all of us. So I can keep going here if you want for some other questions and dialogue if you want.
Welcome, Mike Allen and Carol. Are there any other questions you'd really like to ask before Fred takes his leave? I know, Fred, I know you got other things going too, but I appreciate your willingness to stand by a little bit longer.
Nothing new on pumped water storage?
That's a long story. The Goldendale project has been approved by FERC, Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. The Yakima Nation just doesn't want that project, but it looks like it's going to go forward. The problem with that is it's going to take $2 billion. It'll take 6 years or more to build. And who is going to be the customer for that thing? I think there will be, but who's going to be the customer for that? There are multiple other proposed pump storage projects around the region. There's a long-standing one down here at Klamath Falls that it's called Swan Lake that might or might not move forward. But they're really, really big projects that take a long, long time.
One thing, Fred, I hate to keep drumming on this, but with solar and wind and battery backup, now the batteries, like you say, have a limited capacity. They won't support extended outages, and there are periods when the wind doesn't blow and it's very cold, and we have outages. And what would support us through a period where the generation is just not available?
Well, remember, we have a really big region. The Northwest is really big. Oregon is just a part of it. We are part of a big connected grid. When, even in a situation like this where the entire West except the Northwest is really hot, there's always going to be somewhere that's not really hot or not really cold, a given area has. In January of 24, Southern California and the Southwest bailed us out. We got 3,000 to 5,000 megawatts of power from there when we had low hydro, gas power plants were running short of gas. The bigger the grid you have, the better. That's a really important part of what's going on. And the system doesn't depend on base load. The system is dispatched hour by hour and within the hour also. So when you look at all the resources that are available in a given utility or across the West or in the Northwest, the planning process, whether it's in an organized market or not, figures out what the best thing is for that hour and picks those power plants and where there's transmission supported, on an hour by hour basis. So the more diverse resource mix we have, especially clean stuff, clean stuff is not dependent on gas delivery and gas power price spikes, doesn't have the emissions of coal, that only can run basically as flat. Nuclear can only run flat. The variability of the wind and solar is an issue, but it's also an opportunity. So I would just say we already know where this is going. PGE is doing a really good job in their planning. They've brought in as much new data center load as anybody in the country except Dominion in Virginia. And it's hard, but it works.
Oh, is there any discussion at all about us continuing to supply Bonneville power to LA?
Fred, you're on mute.
Could you ask the question again?
Okay, the power line that feeds LA from Bonneville?
We have two big interties from here to California. Long story I won't get into. They can be a little finicky, the DC intertie in particular, but they provide going south about 8,000 megawatts when they're all running, and going north about trying to think this out loud, about 6,000 going north. And we use them both directions all the time. They're really, really important. Building a new one, not going to happen.
Is it still the case that California's got offshore wind in the plans?
It's coming, yes. It's coming slower, but it will be happening.
Well, that would seem to me to be a way of taking their load off of us.
Well, partly, and they would grow in load too, and they have a lot more solar, a lot more solar surplus. That's what we're literally getting California solar right now to help power this fall.
Didn't know that.
Fred, how about offshore wind on the southern Oregon coast?
It's going to be a while. I think it'll happen by the late 2030s, realistically. I'm very involved in that issue. It's really hard to do because we don't really have the port facilities to support it. We have a lot of political opposition. It's expensive, but it's very valuable. It will happen, but it's going to take at least another decade. And I probably should jump off now. I realize I do have to be on another call.
Okay. Thank you, Fred, for the time and the information. And we will be wanting to put this on our website, the video, as well as the PowerPoint.
Yeah, that's fine.
And that's okay with you? Good.
Yeah.
We'll do that. I want to thank everyone for joining us here. It's very, very interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody.
Very good. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Yeah.